Whoa.
Yeah, look at that. So that's the top of the piston.
Pretty gnarly.
So we really need to rotate. Yeah. That's really bad. Never fear, the Jeep Doc is here with parts. We're gonna fix this thing.
All right, look who it is. It's Rick, the Jeep Doc. He's here to help me out with the FC, all the way from Virginia.
We got
Wherever that place is at.
DEI heat shields.
All right, you got heat shield for the injector rail.
Yep. So got a brake pedal. Got the bracket for the brake switch.
Brake switch bracket. That I can probably use that. This box of goodies.
All right, 4-hole injectors.
Oh,
We're gonna
Dodge
upgrade
Neon
that.
injectors.
Yeah, we're gonna upgrade that.
Sweet.
And a hat.
Oh, a beanie. Jeep Doc.
New water pump.
Now, why do we need a new water pump? You think the old one's bad?
Just for maintenance, because we don't know what the mileage is and what the condition of that one is.
Probably 1,000,000 miles.
Yeah, so you got everything exposed. You might as well put it in.
You look like you got spider bit.
I did. I got spider bit. I did
Poor-
the thermostat housing.
Poor Rick got bit by a spider on his face.
Yeah, don't look at it. So, do a little bit of maintenance to this thing. Make sure it's going to run right.
What are we going to do with the thermostat housing?
So, on mine, the CJ I'm building, I drilled this port right here and tapped it 1/8 NPT thread so I can put a thermostat switch or a thermostat sensor in this. That way you can put an aftermarket gauge in the dash. You know, so the engine had a whole bunch of junk in it. I'm gonna flush it out. Got me.
Straightening up there a little bit.
What kind of disc is that?
It's an ROLOC disc. So it's just got little plastic teeth, little rubber teeth. This one's kind of old and abused, but 3M makes a really good one. This is off-brand, but 3M has a much better quality one.
You can get those on Amazon?
Amazon or like paint and body type stuff. Tip for you to pull the fuel rail. What's the tip?
Okay, so tip on pulling a fuel rail, you don't want to pull on one end and just yank it up because that's one that's going to bend your cups that the fuel injectors go into. So you want to put even pressure on it. Once you get all your bolts out, grab either end and with 2 fingers, just pops right out. So that way you put even pressure on all your fuel injectors and you're not going to bend these little cups. I've seen people bend these cups and then it leaks fuel once you put everything back together.
Those things look pretty nasty.
Yeah, they're not nice.
All right, good thing we're replacing that.
Absolutely. Anytime I got an engine out, all this little stuff is what I replace, and it makes it a whole lot simpler. Okay, so Matt's cleaning the ports for the injectors on the FC build.
I'm just spraying the brush, that way I don't get too much of this cleaner in there, and then using the brush to get in there. That's working good. It's cleaning that right up.
Okay, so that whole process was to clean the ports for the fuel injectors. Matt got all pretty spotless. We're using a shotgun nylon bristle brush bore cleaner. So that way the fuel injectors have a nice clean seat so they don't have any leaks. So as you can see, engine was pretty dirty, but we're gonna get that all cleaned up, and I'll bring you back and I'll show you installing the injectors on the fuel rail like what I did on my scrambler. Be right back. I think it's wide enough. No, it's not wide enough. Here it is. So this is a pulse valve. What it does is it takes the shock load off of the fuel that's in the fuel rail. So put the inlet through. And pull your injector mount through. Tangs for the mounts on the block. This one's tight. It's a lot tighter. So we're going to install the injectors. It's like on the last video. If you haven't watched it, go ahead. I'll leave a link for that. But brand new 4-hole injectors. I'm going to set this thing up pretty well. Focus. You can see there's 4 holes. It's a little bit of an upgrade. It's not anything special. No different poundage. It's just 4 holes, so it atomizes the fuel better. So what I do is I use a little bit of Vaseline on these Viton O-rings. Not much, just enough to make it slide in. And bolts. So make sure, we'll start this one. And then just pop in. And give them a little turn. And of course you gotta put the clips on it.
This is going to be the fanciest FC that has ever been built. Look how fancy this is.
4-hole injectors, vapor lock covers. I went ahead and lubricated all the injector O-rings with some Vaseline. So there's a particular way you want to put these in. And drop them in, make sure they're all lined up on the hole. You don't use these bolts to draw it in. You want to put a firm pressure on it, but you don't want to kill it. So you just take and you press it. You see how it just fell in place? Just like that. That's all you need to do.
I just want to show how fancy this is.
This drives me nuts. Why can't you put it over here?
Yeah, they should have put that on the outside, or at least in between the injectors, not right in the middle of one.
DEI, don't get me wrong. I love your product, but let's put the tag somewhere else. Because it covers the injector hole.
How about right here, hanging off the end?
Yeah, that'll work.
Alright, we're making this thing look fancy, but I wanted to tell you guys, because of the 0506, I think it was 0506, right? Mm-hmm. The oil pump drive assembly / camshaft position sensor / whatever you want to call this thing was bad in some of these motors. And since we're changing, well, this one is the 04 motor.
This is 04.
But we're using the wiring off of the 06. So we have this new sensor with the new oiling part. What's different about it, do you know?
So what they did, originally they had 2 bearings that supported this shaft. What would happen is this bearing that was down here would prevent the oil from traveling up the shaft, and it would ruin the bearings on that shaft. So what they did is they removed this bearing on this end so the oil is able to travel up, and there's still a bearing here, or a bushing here, and now the oil can travel up into the distributor housing, or actually oil pump shaft housing, whatever you want to call it, cam position housing.
There's so many names for this thing.
For it. So basically all it is there's a reluctor wheel on the inside of here. This sensor here reads the reluctor ring, and it tells the computer what relative position the cam is in compared to the crank, so it fires everything correctly.
And typically that would be where your distributor would be on an older model.
Right.
Why can you not just call it a distributor? Because it doesn't do the same thing?
Doesn't do the same thing. There's no distributor cap. There's nothing to distribute.
Right.
So all this is doing is reading the tones off of the tone ring inside here.
All right. So, but to do that, we need to find top dead center. So we're going to pull spark plug 1.
Number 1.
And we'll show you how to do that.
All right. So what we're doing is we pulled number 1 spark plug. I'm going to put finger on the hole, and we're going to rotate the engine over so we can feel the compression stroke. So once we get it on the compression stroke, we know that we're not 180 out or so forth. So what we're trying to do, there's a mark on the crank and there's a mark on the timing cover. Once you feel compression in the cylinder starting to come up, you know you're going to be on compression number 1. That's what the engine timing is all set off of. So we have to rotate the engine, get the compression stroke on number 1, and set the timing mark on 0. That way we know we're dead on number 1. So we can drop the distributor in and we know we're in the right position.
The reason you want to do that is it's kind of like setting your 0. If you have a gauge and you're reading it but you don't know 0 is 0, then it's useless, right?
Right.
So this is like setting our gauge to 0 basically. Okay, so he's going to turn the flywheel over and feel with his finger for when it releases air, correct?
Yeah, well, you want to feel it build air up. And this is hard to do with just a wrench. You really should do it with the starter. It's a little bit easier, but sometimes it'll go right past the timing mark, and you don't want it to go past it.
You also got to keep in mind that cylinder number 1 was the one that we had issues with. Not building compression.
Right. You heard it?
Something beeped.
So that was a squeak. It was the compression in the cylinder coming up. So the timing mark is right here. So we know we're starting to build compression on cylinder number 1.
Okay, so we're going to rotate that over to
The timing mark right
there.
there.
So line that up with that.
Not really supposed to go backwards, but anyway.
If you were to just line this mark up with that alone, and that's all you did, you could still be right, but you could also be 180 out. So keep that in mind, because that's going to rotate around twice for every time that this builds compression once. Is that correct?
Yes, 4-stroke.
Let's make a 2-stroke.
Suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. So what I'm doing is pulling a retainer. It retains the oil pump drive / cam position sensor housing out.
So now that we have that at top dead center, is it still possible to get that 180 out?
It is possible because we think it built compression. It's not 100% because we don't have the starter hooked up, and we could have just heard it on another cylinder, but I felt it when it started to build a little bit of compression. If it's on compression stroke now, it's going to be dead on time, number 1, if you know for a fact that it built compression.
So how do we know when we take this one out that we're putting the next one in the same exact position?
Well, it doesn't matter what position you put the distributor or cam position sensor in.
Okay.
It's going to be on number 1.
Okay.
Because it is locked out. It is locked out with this little pin. So if you took, I don't want to drop that gasket. So if you took this cover off, you'll see that this sensor right here reads a reluctor wheel. It has teeth on it. It reads a reluctor wheel. So it's locked in on number 1 right now. It's top dead center.
Okay.
So I could literally take this thing and set it sideways, backwards, whatever. It's on number 1.
Okay. And then once you put that in, we'll pull the pin?
Pull the pin. Man, it came out easy. So what I'm doing is, if you notice, this is a flat piece, almost like a screwdriver. So this engages the oil pump shaft that's in the oil pump, obviously, and the cam drives this shaft, which in turn drives the oil pump. So you have to engage this correctly when you drop the distributor, or I keep calling it a distributor. It's a cam sensor.
I like to call it distributor.
All right. So what I haven't done, and I need to do, is coat this gear with some grease. To build an engine, you want to make sure everything's lubricated before you go to fire it up. So it's not going to have any oil on it right away. So what I'm doing is I'm taking and greasing this gear up so it's not a dry start, if you will. Makes the longevity of the gear.
Because there hasn't been oil circulating in this thing for a while.
Let's see if I can do this in one shot.
All right, see if it'll drop right in.
All right, so you want to go 45 degrees out. Boom.
Oh, first shot.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, we're one step closer. I hope you remembered the gasket.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's
If you remember the last video, we sent this wiring harness off to Hotwire Auto.
This thing is gorgeous.
That's what you're looking for right there, hotwireauto.com. And what they do is they strip everything out that you don't need, and you can specify exactly what you do need, what you don't need, and you can specify the lengths. So we had them extend the computer so that we could put it in the cab. You can have them cut anything out you want, add anything you want, but basically they go through the entire harness and make sure that it's all working properly. Would you add anything to that description?
So what he does is he goes through and you can specify like this. I'm stepping on the thing. So I had him add this engine temperature gauge so that wire throughout the harness. You can see where it's stitched in. So you can specify, like, if you're putting the motor in a, like a hot rod or something, you have extra wires put in there so you can run your gauges, like autometer gauges and so forth. Well, he labels every stinking thing.
What's this one? Injectors.
So this would be covered in that plastic.
Idle air. So everything's labeled, and then they also add, which we should talk about, is this little fuse box.
Yes.
Can you open that? I've only got one hand.
So this has the ASD, all your relays, and your fuses that's necessary to run the engine. And that's all it is.
So it simplifies things, basically.
Absolutely.
Simplifies the entire process. So now we know where everything goes.
Sealed, labeled, has its own serial number. So if you have trouble with it.
Check that out. Nice.
And I had this done 12 years ago on another scrambler. And that's how I got to know Chris. And he's done quite a few of them for me, like on my 47 Willys, and each one of them is of this quality. And it's just,
yeah,
it's uncomparable.
And it's not just Jeeps, he does everything, right?
Yeah,
hot rods.
Yeah, Hellcat engines. I mean, I believe he's got a connection for the computers and the harness, and it's like plug and play type stuff.
Right,
But
so.
this is just beautiful.
Hotwire Auto, tell him I sent you. His name is Chris. So we're going to put this thing on, and then we'll be able to start this sucker.
There, done. Time.
So all these wires, we have them plugged in. This wire set here goes into the cab, like we mentioned, and it's got everything I need on there. And it's kind of funny because usually that would come back this direction, but in this case it's going to go forward, so the cab actually sits, the dash actually sits up here. So everything's kind of backwards. Are we missing anything to try and start this?
We should be able to fire it.
We can't keep it running though because we don't have any water in it, and
say 15 seconds at the most.
Yeah, we need to put fuel in it. I think we're missing that. But
fuel pump. So.
Oh, we need to connect the fuel line.
Well, we gotta flush the fuel line first.
Okay. Yeah, we want to flush it and make sure there's no gunk in there. I did blow it out with air. Yep.
Got fuel?
Got fuel.
Is it clear?
Yeah. Yep, it's clear.
Okay.
Oh no, we lost all the fuel.
Oh man.
Look what you did. It's trying. Come on, baby. I hear something. I hear air coming out of somewhere. We've tried adding fuel. We added fuel. We're getting fuel. We're getting fuel. We're getting spark. Sort of, sometimes. Nope.
Nope. She don't like it.
Sorry guys, we're gonna have to scrap the FC project and go with another project. What do you vote on next?
A complete overlay.
Should we build something that's already running and driving? That would be awesome.
Yay!
Okay, we're going home.
Enjoy your 6-hour drive.
We'll explain to them.
8.
Hey, Matt's putting the old pump drive back in. It's like the umpteenth time we've had it in and out, trying to figure things out. Turns out the flywheel flex plate is supposed to have 32 windows. So this engine is 04. That engine is 06. The windows, when I'm talking windows, is these holes in the flywheel or flex plate, whatever you want to call it. This one has 12. The one that we just put back in this Jeep, along with the transmission from the 06 back in, had 32 windows. So we've already test fired it with the cam sensor out and it ran. So what we're doing is reclocking the cam sensor slash oil pump housing, so it's in phase. So we're going to attempt to fire it with everything hooked up correctly, and hopefully everything goes well. All right, so we're going to attempt to fire it again. Here we go. Yeah, transmission fluid everywhere. Too late. She's bleeding. All right, success. That's awesome. Good job, Matt. You did a good job with that distributor slash cam crank sensor or whatever you want to call it.
I didn't do it. You did it.
No, you did. This is the engine that came out of the frame. If you guys remember, the number 2 cylinder and number 6 cylinder were the ones that had a lot of rust in it. A lot of you guys were saying, hey, how come you didn't put a scope in it? Here's the new scope. So got this from Snap-on a couple days ago, and we're gonna set it in here and scope these cylinders off. Let's see. Look at that, right off the bat. See all the pit? All right here. And so the piston was up top. I mean, you can see the ridge. Yeah. So that cylinder is no bueno. That's gonna have to be bored out, and new pistons, new rings, new rod and mains. So basically you're rebuilding the engine on that one. Matt, you looking for boogers?
I'm just seeing what it looks like. I need to trim, man. That is hairy.